My father stole every paycheck for 2 years, then demanded I pay their $85,000 debt, but I got a restraining order and left them with their problems. I'm 24 years old. I work part-time at a restaurant while finishing college, and honestly, I need to tell this story because it's only been like 6 months since I cut contact completely with my parents, and there are still days when I wake up feeling like maybe I was too harsh. But then I remember everything that happened, and I know I did the right thing. The thing is that my parents, Martin and Sharon, basically controlled every aspect of my life until I turned 18. And when I say every aspect, I mean literally everything. Like from what clothes I could wear to who I could talk to. And now that I'm finally free from all of that, looking back, I can't believe I put up with it for so long. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was a kid, like around 10 or 11 years old, and I started noticing that my house wasn't like my friends' houses. My father had this obsession with control, with knowing exactly where I was at every moment, what I was doing, who I was talking to. At first, I thought it was because he cared about me. You know, like any father. But over time, I realized it wasn't concern. It was something else. It was like he needed to have power over me. He installed cameras all over the house when I was like 12 years old. And they weren't the typical security cameras at the entrance. No. He put them in the living room, in the kitchen, even one pointing toward the hallway where the bedrooms were. He said it was for security, but I knew it was to watch me. My mother, Sharon, never said anything about it, never opposed it. In fact, she herself constantly reminded me that my father was watching, as if that was something normal. The rules in my house were absolutely ridiculous. I couldn't go out after 6 in the evening, not even on weekends. I couldn't have social media. Nothing. No Facebook or Instagram, nothing at all. My father checked my phone every night, read every message, every conversation, and if he saw something he didn't like, which could be literally anything, he'd interrogate me for hours. I remember when I was like 14 years old, a girl from my class, I don't even remember her name now, sent me a message asking about the math homework. And my father saw that message and basically accused me of having a secret relationship. He made me sit at the kitchen table, turned off all the lights except one lamp that he put right in my face, literal like in interrogation movies, and asked me over and over who she was, why she was writing to me, what kind of relationship we had. I explained to him probably like 20 times that she was just a classmate asking about homework. But he kept going and going, saying I was lying to him, that I was doing things behind his back, that I was a liar. My mother was standing there in the corner of the kitchen, arms crossed, nodding her head every time my father said something, backing him up on everything. That night I cried myself to sleep. Not so much because of the interrogation itself, but because I realized that my own mother was never going to defend me, that she was always going to be on his side no matter what. The following years were basically more of the same, but worse. Because the older I got, the more control my father wanted to exercise. When I turned 16, I got my first job at a local grocery store. I was so excited, like I thought I was finally going to have some independence, some of my own money to buy the things I wanted. I remember perfectly the day I got my first check. It was like $280 or something like that. I had worked part-time for 2 weeks, and I felt so proud. It was my money. I had earned it. I came home with the check in my hand, smiling, and my father saw it and extended his hand. I thought he just wanted to see it, you know, but no, he told me, "Give me that." And I said, "Dad, it's my money. I earned it." And he looked at me with that face he made when he was about to explode and told me, "While you live under my roof, everything you earn is mine. I need it for household expenses." I tried to argue. I tried to explain to him that I needed that money for my things, for gas, to go out with friends, but it was useless. He took it from my hand and that was it. And it continued like that every 2 weeks, every damn 2 weeks for almost 2 years. I would work, get my check, give it to my father, and he would give me back like $20 or $30 for my expenses, as if I were a child getting his allowance. The worst part is that my mother acted as if this was completely reasonable, as if it were normal for a father to take his teenage son's entire salary. A couple of times I tried to hide some money, like I'd ask to be paid in cash and save $10 or $20 bills in an old book I had in my room, thinking he'd never find it there. But, turns out, My father searched my room constantly, like once a week, moved all my stuff looking for I don't know what, and obviously he found the money. When he found it, I thought he was going to kill me. Literal. I had never seen him so furious. He yelled at me for hours, called me a thief, told me I was stealing from my own family, that I was ungrateful, that after everything they had done for me I repaid them like this. My brother, Matthew, who's like 2 years older than me, heard everything from his room but didn't come out, and I don't blame him. He was also fed up with everything but was scared. Just like me. The months before I turned 18 were the worst, because I had already decided I was going to leave as soon as it was legally possible. But I had to act like everything was fine, like I wasn't planning my escape. I kept working, kept giving my check to my father, kept following all his absurd rules, but inside I was counting the days. I started saving any money I could. Like, if I found change on the street, I'd save it. If someone gave me a tip at work, I'd hide it in my sock. Anything. I also started looking for rooms to rent in secret, using the library computer, because obviously I couldn't do it at home. I found a place. It was basically a room in an older lady's house. I shared a bathroom with 2 other tenants, but it was cheap and available immediately after my birthday. The day I turned 18 was surreal. My parents made me a small cake, sang happy birthday to me, acted like they were normal parents, and I just kept thinking that in exactly 3 days I was going to leave. I didn't tell them anything because I knew that if I did, they would find a way to stop me. So, I waited. 3 days later, it was a Tuesday. I waited for my father to leave for work and my mother to go out shopping. I put all my clothes in 2 suitcases I had hidden under my bed, grabbed my documents, my birth certificate, my driver's license, everything, and I left. I left a note on the kitchen table that said simply, "I'm leaving. Don't look for me. Thanks for everything," and walked out the door. My father called me like 50 times that day. I'm not exaggerating. 50 calls, and I finally answered because he wouldn't stop. He yelled at me, told me I was an idiot, that I wasn't going to last even a week alone, that I was going to come back begging for help, that without them, I was nothing. My mother got on the phone and told me I was breaking my father's heart, that after everything they had sacrificed for me, I was doing this to them, that I was a horrible son. I hung up and blocked their numbers, at least for a while, because I needed space. I needed to breathe, without feeling like someone was constantly watching me. The first months living alone were difficult. I'm not going to lie. The room was small and cold. I worked double shifts at the grocery store to pay rent and food. I barely slept. But I was happy. Or at least happier than I had been in years. Because for the first time in my life, I could make my own decisions. I could go out when I wanted. I could talk to whoever I wanted. I could exist without someone controlling me. I enrolled in the local community college, started taking night classes, and got a second job at a restaurant on weekends. It was exhausting. Like there were days when I worked from 6 in the morning until 11 at night with classes in between. But I did it because I wanted to prove, more than anything to myself, that I could do it alone. About a year after leaving, I moved to a slightly bigger and better studio. Still wasn't a big deal, but it had my own bathroom and a small kitchen, and for me that was like a palace. I was starting to feel like my life was finally taking shape, that I was building something of my own, something that nobody could take away from me. I kept minimal contact with my parents, like I'd send them a message every month or so saying I was okay, more than anything so they wouldn't show up at my work or something like that. And they'd respond with short and cold messages, basically making it clear they were still angry at me for leaving. And then, about a year ago, I received a package from my father. It was big and heavy, and when I opened it, I found a bunch of documents, like legal papers, contracts, account statements, and a handwritten letter from my father. The letter said something like, "Son, your mother and I have been going through financial difficulties. The business we started a few years ago didn't work out as we expected, and now we have a significant debt with the bank. We're talking about almost $85,000. Since you're our son and we raised you and gave you everything, we expect you to assume your responsibility and help us pay this debt. Attached, you'll find the necessary papers for you to sign and take charge of a portion of the loan. I read that letter probably 5 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Basically, they wanted me, who was barely managing to pay my own bills, to assume part of their debt for a business I never knew anything about, in which I never participated, from which I never saw a cent. I called them, and when I say it was the worst conversation of my life, I'm not exaggerating. My father answered, and before he could say anything, I blurted out, "Dad, what the hell is this?" And he very calmly told me it's exactly what the letter says. "We need your help." And I said, "But I had nothing to do with your business. Why should I pay your debt?" Education, and now it's your turn to give back. I tried to stay calm, but I was shaking with rage. I told him that they chose to have me, that was their responsibility as parents, not a loan that I had to pay back, and that there was no way I was signing those papers. My mother jumped into the conversation, screaming that I was selfish, that I only thought about myself, that any decent son would help his parents in a moment like this. And I yelled back, "You never treated me like a son. You treated me like a prisoner. You took my money for years. You controlled every second of my life, and now you want me to give you more. No, it's not going to happen." I hung up and just sat there on the floor of my studio, crying, because I couldn't believe that after everything I had gone through to free myself from them, they were still trying to control my life. 2 days later, I sent them a certified letter, written in the most formal and clear way possible, where I basically said I wasn't going to sign any documents, that I wasn't going to assume any responsibility for their debt, and that I considered our relationship over. I asked them not to contact me anymore, to respect my decision, and to move forward with their lives without me. I thought that would be enough, that they would understand the message and leave me alone. But no, it was the complete opposite. They started harassing me. Like my father would send me emails every day telling me I was a failure as a son, that I was going to regret it, that when they were gone I was going to live with the guilt of having abandoned them. My mother left me voicemails crying, saying I was killing her with sadness. How could I be so cruel to the woman who gave me life? I tried to block them, but they found ways to contact me. They created new emails, called me from unknown numbers. They even showed up at my work once, causing a terrible scene until I had to call security. The situation got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, where I felt like they were stalking me, harassing me, and it was my brother Matthew who suggested I consider a restraining order. He had also cut contact with them by that point, was fed up with all their manipulation, and he told me, "Look, I already went through this. Believe me, they're not going to stop until you legally force them." So I looked for a lawyer. Well, more like a free legal clinic at the university. And with their help, I filed an application for a restraining order against both of them, my father and my mother. I had to go to a hearing. I had to stand in front of a judge and explain the whole situation. I had to show the emails, the voicemails, the security report from my work, and it was humiliating, like having to expose all that family drama in front of strangers, but the judge listened to me and approved the order. My parents were prohibited from contacting me in any way, getting within 100 meters of me, my home, or my work, and any violation would result in legal consequences. After that, finally, I had peace. The first months I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting them to show up at any moment, but they didn't, or at least not that I know of. Matthew tells me from time to time that they're still struggling with their financial problems, that they're fighting to pay their debts, and part of me, a very small part, feels some pity, but then I remember everything they did to me, and that pity disappears. I don't know if I'll ever forgive them. Honestly, I don't think so. But what I do know is that making the decision to cut contact completely was the best thing I could have done for my mental health, for my future, for my life in general. Now I'm 24. I'm in my 3rd year of college studying business administration. I work at the restaurant that I love because my coworkers are like my chosen family, and I have my own apartment that maybe isn't luxurious, but it's mine. I pay for it. Nobody can take it away from me. I've been in therapy for the past year, trying to process all the trauma of having grown up in such a toxic environment, and my therapist tells me I've made incredible progress. That the fact that I was able to establish such firm boundaries demonstrates a strength that many people never develop. I still have bad days when I feel guilty about having cut contact with my parents, days when I wonder if I was too harsh, but those days are becoming less frequent, and when they come, I talk to Matthew or my therapist and they remind me why I made that decision. Last week, I was organizing my stuff and found that letter my father sent me with the loan papers. And I read it again, and I realized it doesn't make me angry like before. I don't feel that rage boiling in my chest anymore. Now I just feel a kind of distant sadness for two people who had a son and instead of loving and supporting him, decided to control and use him. I tore the letter into small pieces and threw it in the trash, and it felt good, like symbolic, like closing that chapter completely. I don't know what the future holds for my parents, if they'll manage to get out of their financial problems or not. But that's no longer my responsibility. It's no longer my problem. I have my own life now, a life I built from scratch, without their help, despite all the obstacles they put in my way, and I'm proud of that, and I think that's enough.